The fluorescent lights of Mercy Regional Hospital hummed with that particular frequency that only night shift workers truly understood. It was the sound of exhaustion, the sound of the hours between midnight and dawn when the world slept and the forgotten kept watch. 2:30 in the morning, November 2024. The emergency room smelled of antiseptic and stale coffee, of hope and despair mixed together in equal measure. The linoleum floor gleamed under the harsh white light still wet from the last cleaning. A mop bucket sat in the corner wheels, squeaking softly as it was pushed across the tiles. Margaret Sullivan pushed that bucket. At 52 years old, she moved with a stiffness that made her look older. Her shoulders hunched forward as if bracing against a wind that never came. Gray streaks ran through her dark hair, pulled back in a messy bun that had given up trying to be neat around hour 6 of her shift. Deep lines etched around her eyes. Not laugh lines. These were the kind that came from seeing too much. Her hands trembled slightly as she wrung out the mop. Damaged hands, scarred across the knuckles and palms. The kind of marks that had stories, though she never told them. The ER was quiet. The calm before the storm that always came in the hours before dawn. 2 nurses chatted at the station, their voices low. An orderly scrolled through his phone. Somewhere in the distance, a monitor beeped its steady rhythm. A heartbeat. Still alive. Still fighting. Maggie dipped the mop again, lifted it, squeezed. The water running brown into the bucket. She kept her head down. Always down. Eye contact invited questions. Questions invited conversations. Conversations invited the past to come knocking. She'd been invisible for 20 months now. Invisible was safe. Invisible was survival. The automatic doors at the ambulance bay whooshed open. Dr. Blake Morrison strode in like he owned the building. At 34, he carried himself with the confidence of someone who'd never been told no. Tall, handsome in that polished Ivy League way. His white coat was crisp. His stethoscope draped around his neck like a trophy. He'd been on call for a consult, some minor case in the ICU that probably didn't need him but made him feel important. He walked straight toward Maggie without slowing down. She saw him coming. Started to move the bucket out of the way. Too slow. His foot caught the edge deliberately. The bucket tipped. Dirty water sloshed across the floor she'd just cleaned. Some of it splashed onto her scrubs. Oops. Blake didn't even slow down. Didn't look at her. Better clean that up. Behind him, 2 nurses giggled. Not loud. Just enough for Maggie to hear. Just enough to make sure she knew they'd seen it. That they found it funny. That she was the punchline. Maggie stood there, water dripping from her uniform, her face blank, expressionless. She didn't say a word. Blake disappeared into the physician's lounge without a backward glance. Maggie knelt down, started mopping again, the same spot. Over and over. Her hands didn't shake anymore. They'd gone still. Perfectly still. The kind of still that came before action. For just a moment something flickered behind her eyes. Something cold. Something dangerous. A flash. Less than 2 seconds. Desert sand. Blinding sun. The smell of burning jet fuel and copper blood. Hands covered in red. A young face looking up. Terrified. Dying. Stay with me, Doc. Stay with me. Her own voice. Strong, commanding. Not the whisper she used now. I've got you. I've got you. You're not dying on my watch. The flash ended. Maggie blinked. She was back in the ER. Back in the fluorescent hell. Back to being no one. She wrung out the mop one more time. Above the hospital, the Seattle sky was black. Rain beginning to fall. November in the Pacific Northwest meant darkness and water. It matched her mood perfectly. Somewhere in the distance, so faint she almost didn't hear it, came a sound. A rhythmic thumping, far away, getting closer. She paused, listened, then shook her head. Tinnitus, the ringing in her ears that never quite went away. A souvenir from too many explosions, too many firefights. She went back to mopping. The bucket was clean again, the floor spotless, like it never happened, like she'd never been there at all. 7 hours earlier, the beginning of the shift. Maggie had arrived at 10:45 p.m., 15 minutes early, like always. She changed into her scrubs in the locker room, navy blue. The color was a coincidence, she told herself, not a reminder. But she knew better. Her locker held almost nothing. A change of clothes, a protein bar she never ate, a photo face down that she never looked at, and buried at the bottom, wrapped in a spare pair of socks, something metal that she refused to throw away but couldn't bear to see. Commander E. Cross. DevGru. Call sign Phoenix. She slammed the locker shut before the memories could surface. The night shift at Mercy Regional was where careers went to die. The nurses here were either new desperate or running from something. Maggie qualified as all three, though only she knew it. She took report from the evening nurse. 4 patients in beds, 2 in the waiting room, nothing critical, just the usual. Chest pain that was probably indigestion, a kid with a fever, an elderly woman who fell. Routine. Routine was good. Routine meant no decisions, no life or death, no choosing who lived and who died. She started her rounds at 11 p.m. sharp. Room 1 held Mr. Patterson, 83, congestive heart failure. He'd been admitted 6 times this year. He smiled when she came in to check his vitals, called her the quiet one, said she had gentle hands. She didn't tell him these hands had once held a battlefield surgeon's scalpel, that they dug shrapnel out of a Marine's chest cavity while rockets exploded overhead, that they'd been steady enough to tie sutures in the back of a vibrating helicopter while taking enemy fire. She just smiled softly, took his blood pressure, adjusted his oxygen. "You're doing great, Mr. Patterson." Her voice was barely above a whisper, raspy, like she hadn't used it in years. Room 2 was empty now. The chest pain had been discharged. False alarm. They always were. Room 3 held Sarah Mitchell, 47, diabetic. Blood sugar through the roof because she'd stopped taking her insulin. Couldn't afford it. A story Maggie heard 3 times a week. She drew blood for labs. Her fingers steady despite the tremor that seemed to live in them permanently now. Muscle memory. You could take the medic out of the war zone, but some skills never left. Sarah winced, then looked surprised. "That didn't hurt at all. You're good at this." Maggie didn't respond, just labeled the vials. Moved on. Room 4, the fever kid. Mom was sleeping in the chair. The boy was finally resting. Maggie checked the IV, made sure the fluids were running, tucked the blanket around small shoulders. For a moment she saw a different child, a different country, a village they'd been trying to help, the boy who'd stepped on a mine. She blinked hard, snapped the rubber band on her wrist, at a trick her therapist had taught her, physical sensation to ground her in the present. The child in room 4 slept on, oblivious. By midnight, the ER had settled into its uneasy quiet, the calm, always the calm before the storm. Maggie was restocking supplies in the med room when she heard his voice. Blake Morrison. He was at the nurses' station, holding court. 3 nurses gathered around him like he was delivering the Sermon on the Mount. "The problem with nursing today," he was saying, his voice carrying that particular tone of superiority that made Maggie's jaw clench, "is that nobody knows their place anymore. Everyone thinks they're a doctor." One of the nurses giggled. Jessica, 24, fresh out of school. Thought Blake walked on water because he'd graduated from Yale. "I mean, I get it," Blake continued. "Nurses want to feel important, but at the end of the day there's a hierarchy. Medical school isn't 4 years of advanced coloring. We earn the right to make decisions. They earn the right to follow orders." Maggie's hand tightened on the IV bag she was holding. The plastic crinkled. She remembered a different hierarchy, one based on competence under fire, where a medic could override a commanding officer if it meant saving lives, where rank meant nothing if you couldn't keep your people alive. But she said nothing. Turned back to her restocking. Invisible. "Take that old nurse on nights," Blake said. Maggie froze. What's her name? Margaret something? Sullivan, Jessica offered. Right, Sullivan. She's been here, 8 months? 20 months, another nurse corrected. Diane Winters, the head night nurse. Older, harder. She didn't worship Blake, but she didn't stop him either. 20 months, Blake repeated. And I've never once seen her speak up, never once seen her show initiative. She just exists, takes up space, does the bare minimum. She's actually really good with patients, Diane said quietly, a small defense. Blake laughed. Being good with patients isn't the same as being a good nurse. I asked her to start an IV on a trauma patient last week. Took her 5 full seconds just to process the request. In my operating room, 5 seconds is a lifetime. The nurses laughed. Even Diane cracked a small smile. Maggie stood in the med room, listening, her face blank. 5 seconds. She remembered 5 seconds. A convoy under fire. An IED explosion. 3 soldiers down. Her team leader screaming for her. The choice. Who to save first? The sucking chest wound or the arterial bleed? 5 seconds to decide. 5 seconds that determined who went home to their family and who went home in a box. She'd saved the chest wound. Lieutenant Brooks had bled out before she could get to him. 22 years old. Engaged. His fiancée had sent Maggie hate mail for 6 months. 5 seconds. Blake didn't know what 5 seconds meant. Maggie finished restocking, walked past the nurse's station without looking at any of them, headed to the break room. She needed to breathe. The break room was empty. A small mercy. Just a table, some chairs, a refrigerator that hummed too loud, and a coffee maker that produced something resembling motor oil. Maggie sat in the corner, pulled out her phone, stared at the black screen without turning it on. The rubber band on her wrist was getting worn. She'd been snapping it too much lately. The nightmares were getting worse. The flashbacks more frequent. 20 months since the mission that went wrong, since she'd made the choice that ended her career. She could still see Lieutenant Brooks's face, could still hear Garrett Fletcher screaming at her to save the lieutenant, not him, could still feel the moment she chose, the moment she decided Fletcher had a better chance. Fletcher lived, a Purple Heart and a promotion. Brooks died. A folded flag and a letter of condolence. Both outcomes her responsibility. The Navy had wanted to give her a medal, a Silver Star, for valor under fire, for saving 12 operators during an ambush that should have killed everyone. She'd turned it down, resigned her commission 3 weeks later, disappeared into the civilian world where nobody knew Commander Elena Cross, where nobody knew Phoenix, where she could be nobody. Her phone buzzed, a notification. She didn't check it, probably spam. The door opened. Diane Winters walked in, poured herself coffee without looking at Maggie. They'd worked together for 20 months and had maybe exchanged 100 words total. Diane sat at the table, sipped her coffee, grimaced. This stuff gets worse every night. Maggie didn't respond. Diane looked at her, really looked at her, like she was seeing something. You know, Diane said slowly, I was Army, 11 years, nurse course, did a tour in Iraq in 2011. Maggie's eyes flicked up, just for a second. Diane caught it. I recognized the look, Diane continued. The way you move, the way you scan rooms, the way you don't flinch when equipment falls or doors slam. She paused. You served. It wasn't a question. Maggie said nothing. Diane took another sip. Navy, if I had to guess. The way you bandage wounds, the way you prioritize patients without even thinking about it. Combat medic protocol. Silence. I won't ask, Diane said finally. Everyone's got a reason for being here at 3 a.m. Yours is your business. She stood, dumped the rest of her coffee in the sink. But for what it's worth, you're the best nurse on this floor. Don't let Blake's ego make you forget that. She left. Maggie sat alone, staring at the wall. Best nurse on the floor. She'd been the best trauma surgeon in DevGru, had trained under the top combat medicine specialists in the world, had saved lives in conditions that would make a civilian ER look like a spa day. And now she cleaned bedpans and got yelled at by a 34-year-old who'd never seen real trauma in his life. This was her penance, her punishment for playing God, for choosing who lived and who died. She snapped the rubber band again. The sting brought her back. Her shift had 4 more hours. She could survive 4 more hours. She always did. 2 a.m. came fast. The ER was still quiet. Too quiet. Maggie had learned that quiet meant something was coming. The universe didn't like balance. It preferred chaos. She was changing IV bags in room 3 when the radio crackled. Mercy Regional, this is Medic 12. We're inbound with multiple traumas from an MVA on I-5. ETA 8 minutes. Major pileup. We've got at least 6 critical. The ER exploded into controlled chaos. Diane's voice cut through. All right, people, listen up. Mass casualty protocol. Jessica, activate the trauma team. Get surgery on standby. Clear beds 1 through 4. Move the stable patients to the hallway. Maggie moved without thinking, years of muscle memory taking over. She had Mr. Patterson out of room 1 and into a hallway bed in 90 seconds. Transferred his monitors, reassured him, moved on. The ambulance bay doors burst open. First gurney, a woman, 40-something, screaming. Compound fracture of the femur, bone visible. Not immediately life-threatening, but painful as hell. Room 2, Diane shouted. Second gurney, teenage boy, unconscious, head trauma, bleeding from the ears. Room 1, get neurosurgery down here. Third gurney, middle-aged man, conscious but struggling to breathe, construction vest, work boots. His name tag read David Miller. He was clutching his left side, face pale, lips starting to turn blue. Blake Morrison appeared from the physician's lounge. Finally. He'd been on call for 20 minutes while the chaos ramped up. He grabbed the chart, looked at David Miller. Probable rib fractures from seatbelt impact, the paramedic reported. Vitals stable in the field. Oxygen sat at 94%. Complained of chest pain. Blake barely looked at the patient. Room 3. Chest x-ray when radiology opens up. Give him some morphine for the pain. It's just bruising. Doc, David gasped. Can't breathe right. You broke a rib, Mr. Miller. It hurts. That's how broken ribs work. Blake was already turning away. Get him out of the bay. We need room for the criticals. Doctor. Maggie's voice was quiet. So quiet. Could I? Not now, Sullivan. Blake didn't even look at her. We've got actual emergencies. The paramedics started wheeling David toward room 3. Maggie watched them go. Something was wrong. She'd seen thousands of broken ribs, dozens of chest traumas. This wasn't right. The way David was breathing, short, shallow. But not just shallow, asymmetrical, his right side moving more than his left, and his neck. Maggie moved closer, pretended to adjust his blanket, got a better look. There, just barely visible in the harsh ER lights, jugular vein distension, the vein in his neck bulging slightly, pulsing. And if she looked carefully at his trachea, the windpipe in his throat, it was shifting, just a millimeter. But shifting, away from the injured side. Her blood went cold. This wasn't broken ribs. This was a tension pneumothorax, air trapped in the chest cavity, building pressure, collapsing the lung, shifting the heart. If it progressed, it would compress the major blood vessels, cut off circulation. David Miller had maybe 10 minutes before he coded, maybe less. The paramedics had the gurney halfway to room 3. Maggie looked at Blake. He was already focused on the next patient, a woman with a facial laceration. Dramatic, bloody, but not critical. Protocol said she should report to the attending physician, let him make the decision. But she'd seen what happened when she followed protocol in life or death situations. She'd watched Lieutenant Brooks bleed out while she waited for authorization to use the last plasma bag. Not again. Maggie stepped forward. Stop. Her voice was different. Not the whisper, not the rasp. Clear. Commanding. The voice of someone used to being obeyed. The paramedics stopped, surprised. Blake turned. "Excuse me." "Don't move him." Maggie walked directly to the gurney. She reached out, placed her fingers on David's neck, felt the pulse, felt the vein. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Blake's voice rose. Maggie ignored him. She leaned over David. "Mr. Miller, look at me. Can you speak? Hurts." David's voice was weak, getting weaker. "Can't get air." Maggie looked at his chest, watched the movement, definitely asymmetrical. She looked at Blake, met his eyes for the first time in 20 months. "This isn't a rib fracture. It's a tension pneumothorax. Progressive. His trachea is deviating. JVD is present. If we move him to the hallway, he'll code in 5 minutes. He'll be dead in 7. The ER went silent. Everyone stared. The invisible nurse had spoken, not just spoken, diagnosed, contradicted the doctor. Blake's face went red. "I am the attending physician here. I cleared this patient. You—" He stepped closer, using his height to intimidate. "Are a nurse. You do not diagnose. You do not speak over me. You follow orders." "Look at his neck," Maggie said. Her voice was steel, calm, certain. "Look at the jugular vein. I don't need a 50-year-old bedpan cleaner to tell me how to read a trauma patient." Blake was shaking with rage now. "You are way out of your lane, Sullivan. Get back to beep, 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 beep." The monitor screamed. David's eyes rolled back. His blood pressure, displayed in green numbers, plummeted. 80 over 50, 70 over 45, 60 over 40. "He's crashing," Jessica screamed. Blake froze. The color drained from his face. All his arrogance evaporated in the face of actual emergency. Get the crash cart. Someone call anesthesia. We need to intubate. No time." Maggie's hand was already moving. She'd been a nurse for 20 months, but she'd been a combat surgeon for 8 years before that. Her hand went to her pocket. She pulled out a 14-gauge needle, large, long, the kind used for rapid decompression. She didn't ask permission. She ripped David's gown open, exposed his chest. Her other hand palpated, feeling, counting ribs, second intercostal space, mid-clavicular line. Blake reached for her arm. "What the hell are you—" Maggie's hand shot out, caught his wrist, mid-air. Her grip was iron, trained, the grip of someone who'd restrained combative patients in the field, who'd held down wounded soldiers while extracting shrapnel without anesthesia. She squeezed. Blake yelped, dropped to one knee, the pain instant and overwhelming. Maggie didn't even look at him. Her eyes were locked on David's chest. "Step back." It wasn't a request. It was an order. She released Blake's wrist. He stumbled backward. Maggie's hands moved with absolute precision. No hesitation, no fear. She felt the landmarks one more time, confirmed the position. Then she drove the needle into David Miller's chest. There was resistance. Skin, muscle, the intercostal space between the ribs. Then a pop, as the needle penetrated the pleural space. And then hiss, the sound of air escaping, loud, like a tire deflating. The trapped air rushing out of David's chest cavity through the needle. David gasped. A huge, desperate intake of breath. The monitor's alarm stopped screaming. The numbers stabilized. Blood pressure climbing. 70 over 45, 80 over 50, 90 over 55. Heart rate settling. Oxygen saturation improving. David was breathing, really breathing, his color returning from gray to pink. Maggie taped the needle in place, secured it, checked his pupils, checked his pulse. She turned to the stunned room. Needle decompression, standard treatment for tension pneumothorax. Her voice had returned to its quiet rasp, like nothing had happened, like she hadn't just performed a surgical procedure without authorization, like she hadn't just assaulted a physician. "He needs a chest tube and a CT scan, but he'll live." She looked at Blake. Blake stood there, clutching his wrist, his face a mixture of shock, humiliation, and rage. The entire ER staff stared at Maggie Sullivan like they'd never seen her before, because they hadn't. For 20 months, they'd seen a ghost, a shadow, a woman who cleaned floors and followed orders and never spoke. For 30 seconds, they'd seen something else, someone else. Diane Winters watched from the nurse's station, her eyes narrow, knowing. Maggie turned away, started to walk toward the med room. Her battle-worn hands were shaking now, the adrenaline catching up. Blake's voice cut through the silence, trembling with fury. "Get out." Maggie stopped. "Get out of my ER." His voice cracked. He was losing control. "You just assaulted a physician. You performed an unauthorized procedure. I'm reporting you to the board. First thing in the morning. You're done, Sullivan. You'll never work in medicine again." Maggie didn't turn around. She just nodded once. "Yes, doctor," and walked toward the locker room. Behind her, David Miller breathed easily for the first time in 20 minutes, alive. The other nurses rushed to his bedside, started the chest tube setup, paged surgery. Blake stood alone, watching Maggie disappear down the hallway. Tomorrow. He'd end her tomorrow. So why did he feel like he'd just made the biggest mistake of his career? The locker room was cold, empty. Maggie sat on the bench. Her shift was over. In 3 hours she'd have to face Kemp, face official termination. But for now, she just needed to breathe. She stared at her locker, debated opening it, looking at what she'd hidden there. No, not yet. She leaned her head back against the cold tile wall, closed her eyes. Outside rain began to fall, hard, Seattle rain, the kind that soaked through everything. And somewhere in the distance, so faint she couldn't be sure it was real, came that sound again, rhythmic thumping. Getting closer. Maggie opened her eyes, listened, just the rain. She grabbed her jacket, prepared to leave through the back exit, go home, sleep for a few hours before the execution. But something made her stop. She turned back to her locker, opened it, reached past the spare clothes, past the protein bar. Her fingers touched metal. Wrapped in fabric, she pulled it out. Slowly, like handling something sacred. The metal tags gleamed dully in the fluorescent light. Commander E. Cross, DEVGRU, call sign Phoenix. She stared at them for a long moment, then wrapped them back up, put them deep in her bag. Not yet. She wasn't ready to be Phoenix again, wasn't sure she ever would be. Maggie walked out of the locker room, through the ER. Past Blake, who stood in the physician's lounge doorway, phone pressed to his ear, calling his father, demanding action. She walked out into the rain and didn't look back. The rain had stopped by the time Maggie reached the bus stop 6 blocks from Mercy Regional. The Seattle streets were slick mirrors reflecting the orange glow of streetlights. Empty, silent, the city sleeping while she carried the weight of what was coming. She sat on the wet bench. The water soaking through her jeans didn't matter anymore. In 3 hours, she'd sit across from Robert Kemp and receive official termination. In 3 days, she'd be unable to make rent. In 3 weeks, she'd be gone to another city, another name, another life spent running. Her phone buzzed, a text from Kemp. "My office, 7 a.m. sharp. Do not be late." She didn't respond. What words could change what was coming? A car drove past its headlights, cutting through the darkness. For a moment, Maggie saw her reflection in a storefront window. A woman defeated, old before her time, not the warrior she'd been, not Phoenix, just Margaret Sullivan. Nobody. The number 47 bus arrived at 3:15 a.m., nearly empty. Just her, a janitor heading home, and a drunk sleeping in the back row. She took a window seat, pressed her forehead against the cold glass. And for the first time in 20 months, she let herself really remember Syria. The mission had been routine. Intelligence gathering near the Turkish border. In and out. A village where a high-value target had been spotted. Commander Elena Cross hadn't been scheduled to deploy. She was supposed to be stateside training new recruits at Coronado. But the team's regular medic had acute appendicitis. They needed someone who could handle Tier 1 trauma. They needed Phoenix. March 2023, 20 months ago, though it felt like yesterday. like an open wound that refused to heal. She'd landed in country with 12 hours' notice, met the team at the forward operating base. SEAL Team 6, Red Squadron, the deadliest operators in the world. Jackson Stone commanded them. 40 years old, built like a tank, beard like a Viking. He'd saved her life twice. She'd saved his 3 times. They were family. Garrett Fletcher was the new guy. 24, baby-faced despite the attempt at a beard. Call sign Ghost because he could move through enemy territory like smoke. First deployment with Red Squadron. Nervous, trying hard not to show it. Lieutenant Ryan Brooks was their communications specialist. 22 years old. Engaged to his high school sweetheart, Melissa. Getting married in June. Showed everyone photos constantly. A golden retriever of a human being. Impossible not to love. 12 operators total, plus Elena. The insert went perfectly. 200 hours. Approached the village on foot. Night vision turning the world green. Intel said the target would be in a compound on the east side. Intel was catastrophically wrong. They'd walked into a kill box. Ambush. 50 hostiles, maybe more. RPGs. Heavy machine guns. Crossfire from 3 positions. The entire village transformed into a fortress designed to slaughter them. The firefight lasted 4 minutes. Felt like 4 hours. Felt like eternity. 2 operators down in the first 30 seconds. Shrapnel wounds. Survivable if they got immediate treatment. Then came the truck bomb. Someone drove a vehicle packed with artillery shells straight at their position. Detonated it 20 meters away. The explosion was biblical. A wall of fire and pressure that turned the world into chaos. Elena had been thrown 15 feet, landed hard on broken concrete, her left leg screaming, shrapnel embedded from knee to ankle, blood soaking through her pants. When the dust cleared and her hearing partially returned, she counted bodies. Stone was up, firing controlled bursts, shouting orders through the radio static. Fletcher was down. Arterial bleed, femoral artery severed, spurting blood with each heartbeat. Bright red fountain. He had maybe 3 minutes before he bled out. Brooks was down, sucking chest wound, air and blood bubbling from a hole in his rib cage, collapsed lung, drowning in his own blood. He had maybe 3 minutes before asphyxiation. Both dying, both screaming for her. She had 1 pressure bandage, 1 dose of quick clot hemostatic agent, 1 bag of O-positive plasma. Not enough for 2. Doc! Stone was screaming. Get them up. We need to move. Elena crawled. Her leg wasn't working right. Dragged herself between the 2 men, 10 feet that felt like 10 miles. Fletcher was younger, stronger. The arterial bleed was catastrophic but accessible. If she could clamp it, pack it, apply pressure, he had a chance. Maybe 60% survival. Brooks was already turning blue-gray. The chest wound was massive, possibly cardiac involvement. Even with immediate intervention, maybe 30% survival. Protocol said, save the most salvageable. Her gut screamed to save Brooks. He was getting married in 3 months. His fiancée was pregnant. Nobody knew yet except Elena. He'd told her on the flight over, sworn her to secrecy until he could tell the team. But her training, her 8 years of experience, her medical judgment, said Fletcher. She made the choice in 5 seconds that destroyed the next 20 months of her life. Went to Fletcher, jammed her fingers into the wound, found the artery, clamped it with her bare hand, applied the quick clot, used the pressure bandage, wrapped it tight. Fletcher stopped bleeding, gasped air. Brooks! Doc! Save Brooks first. I will, she lied. Stay with me. She crawled to Brooks. Too late. She'd known it would be too late, but she had to try. His eyes were already glazing, the light fading. She tried needle decompression, chest seal, direct pressure. Nothing worked. Too much damage, too much blood loss, too much time elapsed. Lieutenant Ryan Brooks died at 0237 local time, 22 years old. Never knew he was going to be a father. Elena held his hand, felt the exact moment his heart stopped beating. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry, Ryan." Fletcher was screaming at her, blood loss making him delirious. "Why didn't you save him?" "Why me? I told you to save him first. Why did you choose me?" Stone pulled her up, threw her over his shoulder like a sack of gear. "We're leaving now." The extraction was hell. 2 kilometers to the landing zone. Under sustained fire the entire way. Stone carrying her. Fletcher walking but barely conscious. 4 other wounded. The helicopter took ground fire on approach. The pilot got hit in the shoulder but kept flying. Landed just long enough for them to pile in. Elena worked in the back of the bird. Kept Fletcher alive. Kept 3 others alive. Her leg screaming, but she ignored it. Brooks stayed behind in a black body bag. They gave her a silver star for saving 5 operators under fire. She handed it back to the admiral, unsigned, unaccepted, resigned her commission 3 weeks later, and disappeared into the civilian world where nobody knew Commander Elena Cross, where nobody would ask her to choose who lived and who died, where she could be invisible. The bus jolted to a stop, her stop. Maggie blinked. Back in Seattle, back in the rain, back in the present. She got off, walked the 2 blocks to her apartment, a studio, cheap, barely furnished. Just a place to sleep between shifts where she tried not to dream. She didn't bother changing, just lay on the bed, fully clothed, stared at the ceiling, set an alarm for 6 a.m. Closed her eyes, didn't sleep. Just saw Brooks's face, over and over, his eyes going dim, the moment of death, and Fletcher screaming, "Why me? Why not him?" "Because I decided your life was worth more than his," she thought. "Because in 5 seconds I played God, and I've been paying for it ever since." The alarm wouldn't go off for 3 hours. It would be the longest 3 hours of her life, just 45 a.m. Maggie stood outside Robert Kemp's office. She'd gone home, showered, changed into clean clothes, business casual, like she was going to a job interview instead of an execution. The hospital was waking up, day shift arriving, the cafeteria releasing its familiar smell of burnt coffee and institutional eggs. She'd walked past the ER on her way up, seen Diane finishing her shift. Diane had nodded once, a warrior's acknowledgement. Blake had been there too, sitting in the physician's lounge, on the phone, probably with his senator father, mobilizing lawyers. He'd seen her, their eyes met. He'd looked away first, small victories. At 6:58, Kemp's assistant arrived. Doris, thin, 50s. She unlocked the office, looked at Maggie with something resembling pity. "He'll be here at 7. You can wait inside." Maggie walked in. The office was exactly what she expected. Diplomas covering one wall, photos of Kemp with various politicians covering another, a desk that cost more than 3 months of her rent. And on the corner of that desk, waiting like a coffin, sat an empty cardboard box. Maggie sat in the chair across from the desk, folded her hands in her lap, calm. She'd faced worse than unemployment. She'd faced choosing between 2 lives with seconds to decide. This was nothing. At 7:03, Kemp walked in, 56, overweight, balding, carrying himself with the self-importance of a man who'd never faced a real crisis. He sat down without greeting her, opened a manila folder. "Ms. Sullivan, do you know why you're here?" "Yes, sir." "Dr. Morrison has filed formal charges, physical assault of a physician, unauthorized medical procedure resulting in property damage, gross insubordination." He looked up. "These are terminable offenses, multiple terminable offenses." Maggie said nothing. "He's demanding immediate termination with cause. No severance, no references. And frankly, I agree with him. You put this hospital at significant legal risk. If that patient had died during your unauthorized procedure, he would have died 30 seconds later if I hadn't acted," Maggie said quietly. "Dr. Morrison misdiagnosed a tension pneumothorax. The patient was coding. I performed emergency decompression, standard protocol." "That's not your determination to make. You're a nurse. Dr. Morrison is the attending physician. There's a hierarchy, a chain of command. I understand chain of command, Mr. Kemp. I followed it for 8 years in a previous position. Kemp's eyes narrowed. 8 years? You've only been here 20 months. What previous position? Maggie closed her eyes briefly. Careless. Stupid. The exhaustion making her sloppy. Not relevant to this discussion. I think it is. Kemp leaned back, studying her. Your employment file is remarkably sparse. Previous employer listed as Cleveland VA Hospital. They confirmed employment when I called for references, but refused to provide any details. Said your records were administratively sealed. He waited. Maggie remained silent. So I called them again this morning, spoke directly to the chief of staff, asked point-blank if Margaret Sullivan was a problem employee. He paused. He laughed. Said, and I quote, "If she's working for you, you have absolutely no idea how lucky you are." The silence stretched. So I'll ask you directly, Miss Sullivan, who are you really? Maggie met his eyes, someone who saved a man's life last night, by assaulting a doctor and destroying hospital property, by preventing malpractice and removing an immediate threat to life. Kemp's jaw tightened. He pushed the cardboard box across the desk. You're terminated. Effective immediately. Pack your personal belongings. Security will escort you from the premises. And if you're smart, you won't contest this. Dr. Morrison's father is Senator Lawrence Morrison. They have legal resources that will bury you in litigation for years. Maggie looked at the empty box, 20 months of her life about to fit inside it. She stood, took the box. For what it's worth, Mr. Kemp David Miller has 3 children. The oldest is 7. The youngest is 3. They almost lost their father last night because a physician was too arrogant to listen to someone with more experience. She paused at the door. I'd do it again. Every time. And I won't apologize for saving a life. Kemp said nothing, just watched her leave. The door closed. He sat alone in his office, staring at the space where she'd been. For just a moment he wondered if he'd made a terrible mistake. Then he picked up his phone, called the senator's office. Politics was politics. A nurse wasn't worth the headache. The locker room was empty. Early morning shift change meant everyone was either leaving or arriving. A brief window of solitude. Maggie opened her locker one last time. The contents were sparse. A change of clothes. One protein bar she'd never eaten. A photo she kept face down. She packed the clothes into the box. The protein bar followed. Then she picked up the photo, turned it over, looked at it for the first time in months. Red Squadron, taken 3 days before Syria. 13 people, all smiling, all alive. Brooks was on the left, babyface, holding up his phone showing Melissa's picture. Fletcher was next to him, attempting a confident smile. Failing. Stone was in the center, arms crossed, looking like he could fight God and make it competitive. And on the right, Commander Elena Cross, short dark hair, sharp eyes, wearing her uniform with pride. She looked like a stranger now. Maggie put the photo in the box, then reached into the back of the locker, to the spare socks where she'd hidden them. Her fingers touched cold metal, the dog tags. She pulled them out, unwrapped them from the socks, held them in her palm. Commander E. Cross, DEVGRU, call sign Phoenix. The metal was tarnished. She hadn't polished them in 20 months, hadn't looked at them, had tried to pretend they didn't exist. I'm sorry, Brooks, she whispered to the empty room. I'm sorry I chose Fletcher. I'm sorry you didn't get to meet your daughter. I'm sorry for everything. The tags felt heavy, heavier than metal should feel. She stood there, alone with her ghosts, trying to decide. Throw them away. Let Phoenix die completely. Move on, or keep them. Keep carrying the weight. Keep remembering who she'd been. She made her decision. Wrapped them back in the socks. Put them in the box. Maybe someday she'd be ready to let go. Today wasn't that day. Maggie closed the locker, picked up the box, started toward the exit, then stopped, turned around, went back to the locker, opened it one more time, took out the tags, unwrapped them, and put them around her neck. The metal was cold against her skin, a reminder, a weight, a responsibility. Phoenix might be dead. But Elena Cross deserved to be remembered, even if only by herself. She picked up the box, walked out of the locker room. Security guard Paul was waiting in the hallway, young, embarrassed. "Ms. Sullivan, I have to escort you out. I'm sorry." "I know, Paul. Just doing your job." They walked together. Through the corridors, past the cafeteria where the smell of coffee made her stomach turn, past the ER. Blake was standing outside the physician's lounge, arms crossed, smirking, watching her walk of shame with visible satisfaction. Maggie stopped, looked at him. He stared back, expecting her to lower her eyes, to show submission. She didn't. She looked at him with eyes that had seen combat, that had made impossible choices, that had watched good people die, that had saved lives he couldn't imagine, and she spoke, quiet, clear, a promise. "Someday, Dr. Morrison, you'll understand what lane I was really in, and when that day comes, I hope you remember this moment." Blake's smirk faltered, just slightly. Maggie walked on, out the doors, into the parking lot. It was raining again. Of course it was. Paul cleared his throat. "For what it's worth, ma'am, everyone on staff is saying you saved that guy's life, that you did the right thing." "Thanks, Paul. And between you and me, Dr. Morrison is universally disliked." "We all think so." Maggie almost smiled. "Take care of yourself, Paul." She walked to the bus stop, sat on the wet bench, put the box beside her. This was rock bottom. Fired. Broke. Nowhere to go, no prospects. Blacklisted. The rain fell harder. Thunder rumbled. And then she heard it. A sound. Faint. Rhythmic. Distant. Thump, 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 thump. She looked up, scanned the gray sky. Nothing but clouds and rain. And tinnitus. The ringing that never went away. Souvenir of too many explosions. She looked back down. The sound came again. Louder. Thump, 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 thump. Not tinnitus. Maggie stood, turned toward the hospital, and froze. Inside Mercy Regional, the morning shift was settling into routine. Diane was finishing her charting, ready to go home. Sleep, return for another 12-hour night shift. Jessica was restocking crash carts, gossiping about the drama from last night. Blake was in the physician's lounge, on the phone with his father, recounting his victory. "Yes, she's gone. I made sure everyone saw her get escorted out. No one challenges me in my ear, Dad. No one." And then everyone felt it, a vibration, low, deep, more sensation than sound. In the chest, in the bones, in the coffee cups on the nurse's station counter. Everyone stopped. "What is that?" Jessica looked around, confused. The vibration grew stronger. The windows began to rattle, gently at first, then harder. Coffee in paper cups started to ripple, concentric circles spreading outward from the center. "Is that an earthquake?" someone asked. Diane walked to the window, looked out, went pale. "Oh my God." The sound became unmistakable now. Thump, 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 rhythmic, mechanical, getting exponentially louder, getting closer. Outside in the physician's parking lot, car alarms began to shriek, one after another, the vibration triggering their sensors in sequence. A cacophony. The sound became a roar, a chest-rattling, window-shaking, all-consuming roar. People poured out of rooms, patients, staff, visitors, everyone looking for the source, looking up. Diane saw it first, her army training recognizing it instantly. Jesus Christ! Dropping from the clouds like a bird of prey, like something from a war zone, like death descending. A helicopter, but not a civilian medevac. Not news, not police, not Coast Guard. This was military, an MH-60M Black Hawk. The angular, aggressive silhouette unmistakable to anyone who'd served. But it was wrong, all wrong. It should have been marked. White stars, tail numbers, unit insignias, American flags. This bird was matte black. No markings whatsoever, no reflective surfaces, no identification. A ghost ship. The kind that didn't officially exist on any manifest. The kind used for operations that never happened. "It's landing," someone shouted. "It's landing in the parking lot." Blake dropped his phone, ran to the window, stared. The Black Hawk descended, rotors still screaming at full combat speed, not slowing, coming in hot. The rotor wash created a hurricane, a wall of wind that bent trees horizontal, toppled trash cans, sent patio furniture airborne, kicked up a storm of debris, and the helicopter touched down. Directly on top of the parking space marked Dr. Blake Morrison, reserved parking. The landing gear compressed. The skids settled. The rotor wash kicked gravel and debris against the hospital windows like hail. The sign reading, "Dr. Morrison Reserved," snapped off its post, flew 20 feet through the air, crumpled against a wall. Blake's face went white. What the hell is happening? The side door of the Black Hawk slid open with a metallic clack. 4 men jumped out. Not climbed, not stepped, jumped. Before the rotors had even begun to slow, they hit the pavement running, moving with the fluid, economical precision of operators who'd done this 10,000 times. They wore civilian clothes, multicam pants, dark t-shirts, but over the shirts they wore full tactical gear. Plate carriers, load-bearing vests heavy with magazines and equipment, short-barreled rifles slung across their chests, HK-416s with suppressors, expensive, deadly. Night vision goggles mounted on high-cut helmets, flipped up but ready, communication headsets sighted arms on drop-leg holsters, and their faces, bearded, weathered, hard. The 1,000-yard stare of men who'd seen hell and walked through it multiple times. These weren't weekend warriors. These weren't National Guard. These were Tier 1 operators. The kind deployed when failure meant death and success meant silence. The lead man was massive, 6'4", maybe 250 pounds of muscle, 40 years old but moving like a predator, thick red beard with streaks of gray, a scar cutting through his left eyebrow, eyes like ice. He scanned the hospital entrance with the systematic efficiency of a hunter, missing nothing. Then he started walking, directly toward the ER entrance. The other 3 followed. Diamond formation, covering sectors, hands near weapons, like they expected hostile contact. "Someone call the police!" Kemp was in the hallway now, red-faced, terrified. "They have guns. They can't bring weapons into a hospital." The automatic doors at the ambulance bay slid open. The 4 operators walked through, into the ER. The lead man stopped just inside, scanned the room. His hand rested on his rifle, casual, ready. The ER went dead silent. A baby that had been crying stopped, went quiet. A patient arguing with triage went silent mid-sentence. The smell hit everyone. Gun oil, sweat, aviation fuel, cordite, the smell of combat, of war. It didn't belong in a hospital, but here it was. Blake pushed forward. "Doctor, authority figure, accustomed to being in charge. You can't be in here." His voice cracked. "This is a hospital. Federal regulations prohibit weapons." The lead operator looked at him, just looked. Blake's words died, literally stopped mid-sentence, trapped in his throat, because that look said everything without words. It said, "I've killed men for less than being annoying." It said, "You are nothing to me." It said, "Move or be moved." Blake took an involuntary step backward, stumbled slightly. The operator looked away, dismissed him as irrelevant. Kemp rushed forward, trying to assert institutional authority. "I am the administrator of this facility. You are trespassing. I'm calling." The lead operator reached into his vest, pulled out a satellite phone, pressed a button, put it on speaker. A voice crackled through, professional, commanding. The kind of voice that ran wars. "This is Admiral Edward Garrett, Joint Special Operations Command. Identify yourself." Kemp's face drained of color. I'm Robert Kemp, hospital administrator. Mr. Kemp, The men in your facility are operating under Title 50 authority, covert action, sanctioned by the National Security Council. They are executing a time-critical mission. You will provide full cooperation, or you will be detained for interfering with a federal operation authorized at the highest levels of government. Do you understand me? Silence. Complete silence. Mr. Kemp, I asked you a question. Yes, sir, I understand. Then step aside and let them work. The lead operator pocketed the phone, looked at Diane, then at the other nurses, evaluating, assessing. Where is she? His voice was gravel, rough from years of shouting over gunfire and rotor wash. Where is who? Diane's voice was steady. Army training allowing her to function when others froze. The nurse, recent hire, quiet, keeps her head down. He paused. Scars on her hands, gray in her hair, early 50s. Diane's eyes widened slightly, recognition dawning. You're looking for Margaret Sullivan. The operator's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Margaret Sullivan, is that what she's calling herself these days? Blake laughed, a hysterical, inappropriate sound. The useless old nurse? We just fired her an hour ago. She's gone. What do you possibly want with... The operator's head snapped toward Blake, the movement so fast it was violent. Blake flinched, actually flinched backward. You, fired. Her. Each word its own sentence, each one landing like a physical blow. She assaulted me. She performed unauthorized medical procedures. The operator stepped forward, into Blake's personal space. So close Blake could smell the gun oil on his gear. You just fired the most valuable combat medic the United States Navy possesses. His voice was quiet now, deadly quiet. The woman who has saved more Tier 1 operators than anyone in the history of Joint Special Operations Command. The woman who held the lead trauma surgeon position in DevGru for 8 consecutive years. Blake's mouth opened, closed. No sound emerged. And if she has left this building, the operator continued, each word precisely measured, the man in that helicopter dies. A Navy SEAL, a decorated operator. Dies because you were too incompetent and too arrogant to recognize excellence when it was standing right in front of you. He leaned closer. And then you answer to the Secretary of Defense, you answer to the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and you answer to me personally. Blake looked like he might vomit. The operator turned to his team. Clear the building. Find her. She responds to the call sign Phoenix. Move. 3 operators dispersed instantly, flowing through the hospital like water. Diane stood. Commander. The lead operator looked at her, really looked, saw the military bearing, the calm under pressure. You served. Army, 11 years, Iraq 2011. He nodded. Respect between warriors. Then you understand what I'm about to tell you. The woman you know as Margaret Sullivan is Commander Elena Cross, United States Navy, DEVGRU Medical, call sign Phoenix. She's been dark for 20 months. We need her. Right now. A man's life depends on it. Diane closed her eyes briefly. I knew it, the way she moved, the way she thought under pressure. She opened her eyes. What happened to her? Why is she here cleaning floors? That's not my story to tell, ma'am. He turned toward the exit, paused, looked back at Blake. Blake stood frozen, the color completely gone from his face. Dr. Morrison, your father is Senator Lawrence Morrison, Republican, Connecticut, serves on the Senate Armed Services Committee. Blake managed a nod. He's been briefed on this operation 37 minutes ago about what you did, about who you fired. The operator's smile was not kind. He asked me to relay a message to his son. Quote, my son is an idiot. End quote. The operator walked out. Blake stood there, the entire ER watching him, staring. His phone rang. He looked at the caller ID with shaking hands. Dad. He didn't answer. Outside, the Blackhawk's engine spooled up. The rotor pitch changed, lifting off, banking north, hunting. Maggie stood in the rain, watching the helicopter approach. She knew that bird, knew the sound, knew the profile. knew exactly what it meant. After 20 months of hiding, of being invisible, of running from who she'd been, they'd found her. The Black Hawk descended, 50 feet away. The rotor wash hit her like a physical wall. Rain turned horizontal. Her hair whipped around her face. The cardboard box flew from her hands, contents scattering across the wet pavement. She didn't move, just stood there, waiting. The side door opened before the bird touched down. A man jumped out. Massive, red beard, scar through his eyebrow. Commander Jackson Stone, Reaper. He walked toward her, slow, deliberate, like approaching a wounded animal that might bolt. Stopped 10 feet away. Phoenix. Maggie's hands went to the metal tags around her neck, the old identity she'd tried to bury. That's not my name anymore, Jack. The hell it isn't. Stone's voice was rough, desperate. I need you, Elena. I need Phoenix right now. I resigned 20 months ago. I'm done. There is no done for people like us. You know that. I'm not like you anymore. She looked down at the scattered contents of the box, the nothing she'd accumulated. I couldn't even keep a job cleaning bedpans. You couldn't keep it because you saved a man's life. Because you couldn't stop being who you are, no matter how hard you try to hide it. I don't want to be her anymore. The words tore out of her. Raw. Every time I'm her, people die. Jack Brooks died because I chose wrong. How many more do I have to lose? This isn't about what you want. Stone stepped closer. This is about duty, about the oath you swore. I fulfilled my oath. 8 years. I gave everything. Then give 1 more hour. Another step. Ghost is dying. Maggie froze. The world narrowed to that single word. Garrett. Training accident. Live fire exercise. Gone wrong. He took a round. Stone's voice cracked. It's bad, Elena. The bullet is lodged against his carotid artery, against the spine. It's a prototype. Magnetic trigger. If we extract it wrong, it detonates, or severs the artery. Maggie's mind was already working, analyzing the protocol she'd written 3 years ago for unexploded ordnance removal from living tissue. You have surgeons who don't know modern ballistics, who don't know combat trauma, who'll kill him trying to help. Stone's voice broke completely. You're the only one who successfully removed a live round from a patient, multiple times. You're the only one who can save him. Jack, I can't. He's asking for you. He knows we came looking for you. Told us not to. Said don't drag her back into this. Stone's eyes were wet. Rain or tears impossible to tell. But I can't let him die. Not when the one person who can save him is standing right here. Maggie closed her eyes, saw Garrett, 24 years old in Syria, screaming at her. Why did you save me? Why not Brooks? Because I chose you. She'd thought 1,000 times because I decided your life was worth saving. Now he was dying, and she had to choose again. Save herself, stay hidden, keep running, or save him. Step back into the fire, become the person she'd tried so hard to bury. Maggie opened her eyes. Where is he? Stone's entire body sagged with relief. The bird. We have maybe 10 minutes before he crashes. Maggie pulled the tags out from under her shirt, looked at them one last time in the gray Seattle morning, then left them visible, over her shirt, where they belonged. Let's move. They ran for the helicopter. The rotors were already spinning back up, the crew chief reaching down to pull them aboard. Maggie grabbed his hand, let herself be hauled into the cabin, and saw Garrett. He looked so young, so pale, lying on a litter, neck wrapped in pressure bandages, already soaked crimson. An operator she didn't know was holding pressure, his hands shaking. Phoenix assessed in seconds. Combat mode engaged. How long since he was hit? 49 minutes. Vitals. BP 70/40. Heart rate 132. He's in hypovolemic shock. Maggie moved to Garrett's side, gently displaced the operator's hands, lifted the bandage. The entry wound was small, clean, but the angle was wrong, very wrong. She palpated carefully, felt something hard beneath the tissue, right where Stone said, against the carotid. One wrong move and he bleeds out. Start another IV. Push it wide open. Radio ahead to Mercy. I need Trauma Bay 1 cleared. Titanium surgical kit from MRI. 6 units O negative. Vascular tray ready. Stone was already on the radio, barking orders. Maggie leaned over Garrett, put her face close to his. Ghost, open your eyes. Garrett's eyes fluttered, unfocused, then found her face, recognition, then guilt, then tears. Doc, I told them, don't bring you back. Shut up and listen. Her voice was firm, gentle. The voice of every combat medic. You carried me 3 kilometers in Syria, under fire. Remember, a weak nod. I owe you 3 kilometers, Fletcher, but right now I just need 30 minutes. Can you give me that? Brooks, you chose me over Brooks. You should have lived. That's what you should have done. That's what you're going to do now. Maggie gripped his hand. I made my choice. I'd make it again. Now, let me save you properly this time. Garrett's lips moved, trying to form words. Don't talk. Squeeze my hand if you understand. A weak squeeze. Good man. Stay with me. The helicopter banked hard, descending toward Mercy Regional. Through the window, Maggie could see the parking lot, the ER entrance, the entire staff standing outside, staring up at them. The Black Hawk touched down hard, landing gear compressing. Stone and 2 operators lifted the litter, moving before the rotors stopped. Maggie jumped out first, hit the ground, and there was Blake, standing directly in her path, mouth open to protest. Maggie didn't slow, didn't speak, just placed her palm on his chest and pushed. Blake stumbled backward, fell hard. Maggie stepped over him, kept moving. Clear Trauma Bay 1. Her voice cut through the chaos. Command voice. Officer voice. Clear it in 60 seconds. Move. Diane was already running. You heard the commander? Clear the bay trauma cart. Move. The staff scattered, following orders without question, because that voice carried an authority that couldn't be denied. Maggie led the operators through the ER doors, down the hallway, to Trauma Bay 1. It was being cleared. A patient with a minor injury being wheeled out. Titanium kit coming. A tech sprinted past. The operators laid Garrett on the bed, carefully, like handling a bomb, because that's exactly what he was. Maggie moved to the head of the bed, checked pupils, checked breathing, assessed. Diane appeared instantly. Commander. Gloves, sterile gown, then run this room, call vitals, manage blood products, keep everyone calm. Maggie looked at her. Can you do that? Yes, Commander. The tech ran in with the titanium instruments. Awkward, wrong, but necessary. Maggie pulled on gloves, the snap familiar, comforting. Stone appeared beside her. What do you need? Hold him still. When I start cutting, sedation won't be enough. He's going to feel it. I need him absolutely motionless. We've got him. 3 operators positioned around the bed, ready. Blake pushed through the door. This is my trauma bay. You can't. Stone grabbed him, dragged him bodily to the door, threw him into the hallway. Get out before I make you get out. Locked the door, turned back to Maggie. He's gone. Good. Maggie looked at Garrett. Ghost, I'm starting now. Stay with me. She picked up the titanium scalpel. Diane, start the clock. 3 minutes. 3 minutes until what? Until he bleeds to death. Maggie positioned the blade. Mark, she cut. The interior of the Black Hawk was exactly as Maggie remembered. Cramped, loud, the smell of hydraulic fluid and metal. The bench seats along the sides, the cargo netting, the first aid kit mounted on the bulkhead, and in the center, on a litter, bleeding. Garrett Fletcher. He looked smaller than she remembered, paler, 27 years old but looking like a scared kid. His neck was wrapped in pressure bandages, already soaked through with red. His eyes were closed, breathing shallow. An operator she didn't know was holding pressure on the wound. His hands were shaking. How long? Maggie shouted over the rotor noise. She was already moving to Garrett's side. her training taking over, the flip switching in her brain from civilian to combat medic. 47 minutes since he was hit, Stone shouted back. We've been holding pressure, can't do more, can't risk moving the round. Maggie's fingers went to Garrett's neck, gently pushed aside the operator's hands, lifted the bandage. The entry wound was small, right side, just above the clavicle, but the angle was bad, very bad. She palpated carefully, felt the edges, felt something hard beneath the tissue. The bullet, right where Stone said. Pressed against the carotid artery, one wrong move, and Garrett would bleed out in seconds. Vitals, BP 70 over 45, heart rate 130, he's in shock. Start another IV, wide open. We need his pressure up before I can work. Maggie was already assessing, planning, running through the protocol she'd written 3 years ago. How far to Mercy? 3 minutes. Radio ahead. I need Trauma Bay 1 cleared. I need a titanium surgical kit from the MRI suite. I need 6 units of O-negative blood. And I need the vascular tray. Stone pulled his radio, started barking orders. Maggie leaned over Garrett, put her face close to his. Ghost, can you hear me? Garrett's eyes fluttered open. Unfocused at first, then they found her face. Recognition, then something else. Regret. Doc, his voice was barely a whisper. Told them, don't. Shut up. Maggie's voice was firm, gentle. The voice of every combat medic who'd ever talked a soldier through trauma. You saved my life in Syria. Carried me 3 kilometers under fire. Remember. A weak nod. I owe you 3 kilometers, but right now I just need you to stay still for 30 minutes. Can you do that for me? Brooks. Garrett's eyes filled with tears. You chose me over Brooks. You should have lived. That's what you should have done. That's what you're going to do. Maggie gripped his hand, felt how cold it was. I made my choice. I'd make it again. Now let me save you properly this time. Garrett's lips moved, trying to say something. Don't talk. Just squeeze my hand if you understand. A weak squeeze. Good man. The helicopter banked hard, descending. Through the window, Maggie could see Mercy Regional, the parking lot, the ER entrance. And standing outside staring up at them was the entire hospital staff. Patients in wheelchairs, nurses, doctors, security guards, all of them frozen, watching a military helicopter land in their parking lot. The Black Hawk touched down, hard, the landing gear compressing. Before the rotors even slowed, Stone and 2 other operators were lifting the litter, moving Garrett toward the door. Maggie jumped out first, hit the ground running, and stopped, because standing directly in front of her was Blake Morrison. He'd come outside, was shouting something, probably about regulations, about unauthorized landings, about how this was his ER. Maggie didn't slow down, didn't say a word, just walked straight at him. Blake's eyes went wide. He saw her, saw something different in her bearing, saw the change. He opened his mouth. Maggie's hand shot out, palm flat against his chest. A push. Not hard, just firm, the kind of push you'd use to move an obstacle. Blake stumbled backward, tripped over his own feet, fell hard on his backside. Maggie stepped over him, kept walking. Clear Trauma Bay 1. Her voice cut through the chaos. Command voice, the kind that brooked no argument. I need it clear in 60 seconds. Move. Diane Winters was there, already moving. You heard her? Clear the bay. Get the trauma cart. Move. The staff scattered, following orders, because Maggie's voice carried an authority that couldn't be ignored. She led the operators through the ER doors, down the hallway, to Trauma Bay 1. It was already being cleared. A patient with a sprained ankle being wheeled out. Nurses prepping the room. Titanium kit, Maggie shouted. On the way. A tech Maggie didn't know ran past, heading for the MRI suite. The operators laid Garrett on the trauma bed, carefully, like handling a bomb, because that's what he was, a bomb in human form. Maggie moved to the head of the bed, looked at the wound again, checked his pupils, checked his breathing. Diane, I need you. Diane was beside her instantly, What do you need? Gloves, sterile gown. Then I need you to run this room. Call out vitals. Manage the blood. Keep everyone calm. Maggie looked at her. Can you do that? Yes, ma'am. Don't call me ma'am. Call me Commander. Diane's eyes widened, but she nodded. Yes, Commander. The tech ran in with a plastic tray. Instruments that looked wrong, blunt, awkward, all made of titanium and plastic. Maggie pulled on gloves, the snap of latex familiar, comforting. Stone appeared at her side. What do you need from us? Hold him still. When I start cutting, he's going to feel it. Sedation will help, but not enough. I need him absolutely motionless. 1 millimeter of movement, and the round could shift. We've got him. 3 operators positioned themselves around the bed, hands ready to hold Garrett down. Blake pushed through the door. What the hell is going on? This is my trauma bay. You can't just get him out. Maggie didn't look up. Now. Stone moved, grabbed Blake by the arm, dragged him toward the door. You can't touch me. I'm a doctor. I'll have you arrested. Stone's face was an inch from Blake's. You're the moron who fired the best combat surgeon in the United States military. Now get out before I make you get out. He threw Blake into the hallway, locked the door, turned back to Maggie. He's gone. Good. Maggie looked at Garrett. His eyes were half closed, fading. Ghost. Stay with me. I'm starting now. She picked up a titanium scalpel, felt the weight. Wrong. All wrong. But it would have to do. Diane, start the clock. I have 3 minutes. 3 minutes until what? Until he bleeds to death. Maggie positioned the scalpel over the wound. On my mark. 3, 2, 1, mark. She cut. Minute 1. The incision was clean, precise, following the original wound tract. Blood welled up immediately. Suction, Maggie said. A nurse held the suction catheter, titanium tip, awkward but functional. Maggie worked by feel, her fingers probing, finding landmarks, the sternocleidomastoid muscle, the carotid sheath, the vagus nerve. And there, right there, the bullet. Small, maybe 9 millimeter, but the casing was wrong, serrated edges, designed to fragment. And in the center, a tiny LED, glowing faintly red, active. I have visual on the round, Maggie said, her voice steady, calm, like she was describing the weather. It's wedged between the carotid artery and the transverse process of C6, approximately 5 millimeters of clearance on the artery side. Can you extract? Stone's voice was tight. Not yet. It's wrapped in fascia. I need to dissect it free. She switched to titanium forceps, started teasing apart the tissue, millimeter by millimeter. The room was silent except for the monitors, beeping. Garrett's heart still fighting, still pumping blood through damaged vessels. Maggie's hands were perfectly steady now, no tremor, no hesitation. This was what she'd been trained for, what she'd done 100 times in worse conditions, in helicopters under fire, in desert tents with no power, in the backs of trucks racing away from enemy positions. This sterile trauma bay was luxury compared to that. She worked deeper, separating muscle fibers, exposing the bullet millimeter by millimeter, and then she heard it, a sound, high-pitched, faint. Whee! Everyone freeze. The room went still. The sound continued, getting higher, a capacitor charging. What is that? Diane whispered. The round is active. It's sensing metal, or vibration, or both. Maggie didn't move, didn't breathe. If it fully charges, it detonates. Jesus Christ, someone whispered. How long do we have? Stone. I don't know. These are prototypes. Could be 10 seconds, could be 10 minutes. The whine got louder, higher pitched, like a mosquito trapped in a jar. Garrett's eyes opened, wide, terrified. He could hear it too, the sound of death charging up inside his own neck. Doc, don't move, don't speak, don't even breathe hard. Maggie's voice was ice, pure control. Stone, on my count I need you to pull him 2 inches toward you, slow, smooth, Like you're defusing a bomb. Because I am defusing a bomb. Exactly. Ready. 3, 2, 1, pull. Stone pulled. Garrett slid 2 inches. The angle changed. Maggie's forceps had clearance now. She slipped them around the bullet. Gripped. Gentle, but firm. The whine intensified, became a shriek. Outside the trauma bay, nurses and patients heard it. That terrible high-pitched scream of electronics building toward catastrophic failure. "It's about to blow," Maggie said, her voice conversational, like discussing lunch plans. "I'm extracting. Now." Minute 2, Maggie pulled. Smooth, steady. The motion she'd practiced 10,000 times on training dummies, on cadavers, on live patients in the field. The bullet moved. 1 millimeter. 2. The fascia tore. A spray of blood hit her face shield. "Arteries nicked," Diane shouted. "Pressure dropping." "I see it." Maggie kept pulling. Constant pressure. No jerking. No sudden movements. "Clamp ready." A nurse slapped a plastic vascular clamp into her other hand. The bullet came free, still shrieking, the LED now bright red, pulsing. Maggie dropped it into a metal basin a tech was holding. Forgot. Wrong move. The metal contact made the shriek become a scream. "Run!" Maggie shouted. "Get it out of here, now!" The tech, his name tag read. Kevin grabbed the basin. Didn't hesitate. Didn't ask questions. Just ran. Out the door, down the hallway, his footsteps echoing. Maggie clamped the artery. The bleeding stopped, mostly. Blood still oozing from smaller vessels, but manageable. She worked fast now. Debriding the wound, removing destroyed tissue, preparing for repair. Her battle-worn fingers moved with precision. Years of experience in every movement. "BP 60/30, Diane called out. "He's crashing. Hang another unit. Push pressors. I need 2 more minutes." "Commander, I don't know if he has 2 minutes. He has as long as I say he has." Maggie's voice was steel. "Pressors. Now." Diane pushed the medications. The monitor started climbing. Slowly. Outside, somewhere distant, came a sound. Boom! The building shook. Just slightly. Windows rattled. Car alarms started wailing in the parking lot. Kevin had made it outside. Had thrown the basin as far as he could into the empty lot behind the hospital. The round had detonated in midair, 30 feet from the building. Blake's BMW, parked in his reserved spot closest to the back lot, caught the brunt of the blast. The windows blew out, the hood crumpled, the alarm screaming. Inside Trauma Bay 1, Maggie didn't even flinch. She was threading sutures, repairing the artery, her hand steady. Stone watched her work, saw the transformation. The mouse had become the phoenix right before his eyes. "Suture," Maggie said. A nurse handed her 4-0-proline, the thin monofilament perfect for vascular work. Maggie tied, cut, tied again, building the repair layer by layer. Minute 3. The final stitches went in. Delicate, precise. Each one placed exactly right. Maggie tied off, cut the suture, moved to the next layer. "BP rising," Diane said, relief flooding her voice. 80/50, 90/55. Heart rate stabilizing, 110. O2 sat improving, 92%, 94. Garrett's color was returning, from ash gray to pale, from pale to pink. He was going to live. Maggie placed the final suture, a drain to prevent fluid buildup, a pressure dressing, taped it down with practiced efficiency. She stepped back, stripped off her gloves, dropped them in the bin. Her hands were shaking now, the adrenaline catching up, the price of control finally demanding payment. She gripped the edge of the trauma bed, held on, took a breath. "He's stable," she said, quiet, almost to herself. "He's going to make it." Stone was beside her, hand on her shoulder, steady, grounding. "You did it." Maggie looked at Garrett, sleeping now, sedated, the monitors showing strong vitals, alive, because she'd made the right choice this time. "I should have done it in Syria," she whispered. "Should have saved them both." You can't save everyone, Elena. I know. Her voice broke, just slightly. The crack in the armor she'd built. Doesn't make it easier. Stone squeezed her shoulder. Welcome back, Phoenix. Maggie nodded, couldn't speak, the weight of her old identity settling onto her shoulders. The metal tags she wore, hidden under her bloody scrubs, suddenly felt heavier. The door to the trauma bay opened, and the consequences poured in. The hallway outside Trauma Bay 1 was packed. Hospital staff, patients who could walk, security guards. Even people from the cafeteria, drawn by the explosion, by the chaos, by the military presence. All of them staring. At the woman covered in blood. At the military operators flanking her. At the scene that looked like something from a war zone transplanted into suburban Seattle. Blake was there, standing near the back, white as a sheet. His expensive suit rumpled, his hair disheveled. Kemp was there, phone in hand, looking lost. The administrator who'd suddenly realized his hospital had become a battleground. Diane stepped forward, addressed the crowd with the authority of someone who'd seen worse. The patient is stable. The surgery was successful. There's nothing to see here. Everyone back to work, but no one moved. They weren't looking at Garrett. They weren't looking at the operators. They were looking at Maggie Sullivan, the quiet nurse they'd overlooked, the woman who'd just performed battlefield surgery in their trauma bay. Stone pulled out his satellite phone, hit a button, put it on speaker. The crowd went silent. "This is Admiral Edward Garrett, Joint Special Operations Command." The voice crackled through. Professional. Commanding. The kind of voice that moved nations. "Put me on with hospital administration." Kemp stepped forward, phone trembling in his hand. "This is Robert Kemp, administrator. Mr. Kemp, the operation was successful. The patient will be transferred to Bethesda Naval Hospital within the hour. I want to personally thank your staff for their cooperation." "Of course, Admiral. We're happy to—" "However," the Admiral's voice went cold, sharp as a scalpel. "I understand there was an incident earlier this morning regarding Commander Cross." Silence. You could hear people breathing. "I understand she was terminated for saving a patient's life, for performing emergency medicine that prevented a fatality, for being better at her job than the physician who misdiagnosed attention pneumothorax." Kemp's face went red, then white, then gray. "Admiral, there were circumstances." Dr. Morrison filed a complaint. "The circumstances, Mr. Kemp, are as follows." The Admiral's voice cut like a blade through butter. "Commander Elena Cross is a decorated naval officer, Silver Star for Valor Under Fire, 2 Purple Hearts, Navy Cross. She has saved the lives of 73 Special Operations personnel over 8 years of combat deployment in Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, and locations I'm not authorized to disclose." Stone was grinning now, enjoying this. "She has more field trauma experience than your entire ER staff combined. She has performed surgeries in conditions that would make a civilian trauma bay look like a day spa. She is quite literally one of the most qualified combat surgeons alive." Blake tried to sink into the crowd, tried to disappear. Too late. Every eye in the hallway turned to him. "And you fired her because a third-year resident with an ego problem filed a complaint." Gasps from the crowd. "Dr. Morrison." The Admiral's voice was arctic now. "Your father, Senator Lawrence Morrison, has been briefed on this situation. He asked me to convey a message." Blake went rigid, his face the color of old parchment. He said, and I quote, "My son is an idiot. Do what you need to do. I won't interfere." More gasps. Someone's phone clattered to the floor. "Senator Morrison is resigning from the Armed Services Committee, effective immediately. He's embarrassed. By you. By this situation. By the fact that his son's incompetence nearly caused the death of a Navy SEAL through sheer arrogance." Blake's knees buckled. He grabbed the wall for support. Someone in the crowd whispered, "Oh my God!" "Furthermore, Dr. Morrison, you are suspended from practice pending an investigation by the State Medical Board. I have already forwarded documentation of your misdiagnosis this morning to the appropriate authorities." Blake slid down the wall, sitting on the floor now, head in his hands. "Mr. Kemp," the Admiral again, his tone slightly softer but still iron. You will reinstate Commander Cross. Immediately. With back pay. With a formal apology from the hospital board. And with whatever position she requests. Am I clear? Crystal clear, Admiral. Good. Put Commander Cross on the line. Stone handed the phone to Maggie. She took it, reluctant, still processing what had just happened. Admiral? Commander Cross, it's good to hear your voice, truly, sir. I know you resigned. I know why. Syria. Lieutenant Brooks. The choice you had to make. I've read the after-action reports. I've read your statement. He paused. I respect your decision, but we need you back. Maggie closed her eyes, saw Syria, saw Brooks, saw his fiancée's hateful emails, saw all the others she couldn't save. Admiral, the team deploys to Yemen in 48 hours. Hostile territory, high-risk extraction, complex medical needs. We need a medic. We need the best medic. We need Phoenix. Opened her eyes, saw Garrett on the gurney, alive, breathing, because of her, saw Stone watching her, hopeful, saw her reflection in the trauma bay window, covered in blood, looking like the warrior she'd tried to bury. No, sir. The hallway went silent. Stone's face fell. I'm not going back to the teams, Maggie said. Clear, firm, final. I'm done deploying. I'm done with combat. I'm done watching good people die while I choose who lives. She paused. Let that sink in. But the Naval Special Warfare Center in Coronado has 300 medic candidates training right now, learning from curriculum that's 10 years out of date, learning from instructors who've never treated a magnetic-triggered fragmenting round, who've never done a needle decompression under fire, who've never had to choose between 2 dying operators with 1 bag of plasma. Her voice grew stronger, more certain. Give me the lead instructor position, director of the Special Operations Combat Medic course, full autonomy over curriculum, stateside only. I'll teach them what I know. I'll prepare them for what's coming. I'll make sure the next generation doesn't lose as many people as we did. Silence on the line, long enough that Maggie wondered if the connection had dropped. Then, done, report to Coronado Monday morning, 0800. You're the new director of SOCM. Full autonomy. We'll have orders and housing ready. Welcome home, Commander. The line went dead. Maggie handed the phone back to Stone. He was staring at her. You're not coming back. No. We need you out there. You need teachers more than fighters, Jack. Every operator I train is potentially 20 lives saved. 50, 100. I can save more lives in a classroom than I ever could in the field. You know I'm right. Stone's jaw worked, processing. Then he nodded slowly. Yeah, you're probably right. He held out his hand. Maggie shook it, firm, the handshake of equals, of warriors who'd seen the same hells. Thank you, Stone said, for Ghost, for all of them, for everything you've done, everything you'll do. Thank you for coming to get me, for not letting me stay hidden. Stone grinned, that wild grin she remembered from a dozen firefights. Wouldn't leave you behind, Phoenix. Never have. Never will. He turned to his team. Load Ghost on the bird. We're wheels up in 10. Bethesda's expecting us. The operators moved. Professional. Efficient. Transferring Garrett's IV lines. Securing the litter. Moving as one coordinated unit. Maggie watched them go. Her brothers, her team. Not her team anymore, but always her brothers. Then she turned to the crowd, to the dozens of faces staring at her like she was an alien, to Blake. He was still sitting on the floor, crying now, silently, tears running down his face, his career, his father's respect, his future, all of it crumbling. She walked over to him. He flinched, expecting anger, expecting retribution, but she didn't hit him, didn't yell, didn't gloat, just looked at him with those eyes that had seen too much death. Dr. Morrison, she said quietly, gently even, medicine isn't about ego. It's not about being the smartest person in the room. It's not about your diploma or your father's name or how many questions you got right on your boards. Blake couldn't meet her eyes. It's about saving lives, even when that means admitting you don't know everything, even when that means listening to someone with more experience, even when that means swallowing your pride. She crouched down, at his eye level now. You almost killed a man today. David Miller, husband, father of 3. He almost died because you were too proud to hear that you were wrong. That's not medicine, that's ego. And ego kills. Blake was shaking. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. I don't know how to learn from it, Maggie said. Simple, direct. Be better, find humility, or get out of medicine before you kill someone for real. She stood, started to walk away. Wait, Blake's voice, hoarse, broken. How do I become better? Maggie stopped, looked back. You already took the first step, you asked. She walked away, left him sitting there, a man broken, but maybe possibly ready to be rebuilt into something better. Kemp approached, nervous, sweating despite the hospital's air conditioning. Commander Cross, about your termination. It was a grave mistake, a terrible error in judgment. If you'd like to return to your position with a significant raise, of course, and no, thank you, Mr. Kemp. Then, what do you want? The Admiral said, whatever you request. Maggie looked at Diane. At the nurses who'd stayed during the surgery, who'd followed orders without question, who'd been professional under pressure. I want you to promote Diane Winters to ER Director. I want you to implement mandatory trauma training for all ER physicians, real training, not just PowerPoints. And I want you to fire anyone who's been the subject of repeated harassment complaints. Kemp nodded, frantic, desperate. Done, all of it, done, absolutely. Good. Maggie started walking toward the exit. Diane caught up with her in the hallway. You're leaving. I have a job in California, better pay, better mission. You could have asked for anything here, your own department, director salary. Hell, you could probably take Kemp's job if you wanted it. Maggie smiled, tired, genuine. I don't need any of that, Diane. I just need to stop seeing ghosts every time I close my eyes. Will teaching help with that? I don't know, but maybe if I can keep the next generation alive, the ones I lost, will rest a little easier. She kept walking, out the doors, into the parking lot. The Black Hawk was still there. Rotors spinning up, the crew loading Garrett aboard. Kevin was standing near his car, staring at the crater in the back lot, 20 feet wide, smoking. His basin twisted metal now in the center. He saw Maggie, ran over, eyes wide. That thing was a bomb. Prototype fragmentation round. Magnetic trigger, yes. And you just pulled it out of a guy's neck with your bare hands. With titanium forceps. But essentially, yes. You're absolutely insane. Maggie laughed. Actually laughed. First time in months. Maybe, but he's alive. She climbed into the helicopter, sat on the bench seat, the familiar vibration of the engines running through her body. Garrett was strapped in, stable, an IV running, color good. He'd make it to Bethesda, make a full recovery, 1 life saved. How many more could she save by teaching? Stone sat across from her, had to shout over the rotor noise. You know, you could still change your mind. Come with us. One last mission. Maggie shook her head. My missions are in a classroom now, Jack. You sure? She looked at Garrett, then at Stone, then at the hospital fading behind them as the bird lifted off. I'm sure, for the first time in 20 months, I'm sure about something. The helicopter banked, headed south, toward California, toward Coronado, toward a new life that looked nothing like the old one but felt more right than anything had in years. Stone leaned back, closed his eyes. Gonna miss having you on the Team Phoenix. You'll have 50 new medics who learned from me. That's better than having me. Not the same. No, but it's what I can give. It's what I need to give. The flight was smooth, the sky clearing, Seattle's perpetual rain giving way to blue as they flew south. Maggie watched the landscape change below, cities, forests, mountains. Somewhere down there, Margaret Sullivan had died. Commander Elena Cross had been reborn, not as a warrior, as something different, something better. A teacher, a guardian. a keeper of knowledge that would save lives she'd never see. Phoenix rising from the ashes, not to fight, to ensure others could. 6 months later, May 2025, Naval Amphibious Base Coronado, California. The lecture hall was hot, stifling. May in San Diego meant sun and heat and candidates sweating through their uniforms. 50 of them sat in rows, exhausted, muddy, fresh from Hell Week. The crucible that separated those who wanted it from those who needed it. They'd started with 62, 12 had quit, rung the bell, couldn't handle the physical or mental pressure. The remaining 50 were the best of the best, but they didn't know it yet. They still looked uncertain, scared, wondering if they had what it took. The door at the front opened. Commander Elena Cross walked in. She wore her service uniform, white, crisp, oak leaf insignia on the collar, ribbons on her chest in neat rows, silver star, purple hearts, Navy Cross, commendation medals, unit citations, the proof of her years, her sacrifice, her survival. She walked to the podium, placed a laser pointer on the desk. No notes. She never used notes. Looked at the candidates, scanned each face, young, old, male, female, different backgrounds, different reasons for being here, all united by one thing, the desire to save lives under the worst conditions imaginable. "My name is Commander Cross," she said. Her voice filled the room without effort. No microphone needed. Projection learned from shouting over gunfire and helicopter rotors. "Most of you think you're here to learn how to put on a tourniquet." She clicked the remote. Behind her, a video played. Combat footage, real footage from Syria. Chaos, explosions, screaming, blood. Several candidates flinched. "You're wrong. A monkey can put on a tourniquet. A child can pack a wound." She stepped out from behind the podium, walked down the center aisle, her eyes meeting theirs. "What you're here to learn is how to think when your world is ending, how to make the right call when every option is wrong, how to choose between two dying teammates when you only have resources for one." She stopped in front of a young candidate, maybe 22, hands shaking slightly on his desk, reminded her of Brooks, of Garrett, of all the young ones. She smiled, kind, understanding. "You're here to become the person your team trusts with their lives. The person who brings them home when everyone else has given up. The person who stands between your brothers and death and refuses to move." She walked back to the front, turned off the video. "I'm going to teach you how to do that. It won't be easy. Some of you will quit, some of you will fail. But the ones who make it through my course will be the best combat medics in the world." She paused. Let that sink in. "Now, who here has heard of a tension pneumothorax?" Hands went up, about half the class. "Good. Who here has actually treated one in the field?" The hands went down, except one. Maggie looked at the candidate, back row, older than the others, maybe 34. Civilian clothes, not uniform. Observer badge. She squinted, looked closer, and froze. Dr. Blake Morrison sat in the back row, notebook open, pen ready, hair shorter, face thinner. The arrogance gone, replaced with something else. Humility. He met her eyes, nodded once. Respect. Maggie stared, processing. "Dr. Morrison," she said, "what are you doing here?" Blake stood, military bearing despite the civilian clothes. "Requesting permission to audit the course, Commander, as a civilian physician volunteer." "Why?" "Because 6 months ago I almost killed a man through arrogance. You saved him. Then you told me to be better or get out of medicine." His voice was steady, honest, no trace of the pompous resident she'd known. "I chose to be better." "Explain." "I resigned from Mercy Regional the day after the incident. My medical license was suspended for 6 months. I spent that time working as a medical scribe, bottom of the ladder, learning to listen, learning humility." He paused. 2 weeks ago, my license was reinstated with probationary status. I could have gone back to surgery. Instead, I saw your name in the Navy Times. New SOCM Director. I applied to audit your course, learn what I should have known all along. Maggie studied him, looking for the ego, the pride, the arrogance that had almost killed David Miller. Didn't find it, found something else. Genuine regret, real desire to change. This course is designed for military personnel. You're a civilian. I know. Admiral Garrett approved my application personally, said the military needs civilian doctors who understand combat trauma, who can bridge the gap when operators come home. Maggie looked at the other candidates, back at Blake, made a decision. Sit down, Dr. Morrison. He sat. You're going to follow every rule, do every exercise, complete every evaluation. No special treatment because you're a physician. In this room, you're a student, nothing more. Clear? Yes, ma'am. And if I catch even a hint of the ego I saw at Mercy Regional, you're gone. No second chances. Clear? Crystal clear, Commander. Maggie turned back to the class, back to the 50 candidates who would become the next generation of combat medics. Tension pneumothorax, she said. 6 months ago, I watched a doctor misdiagnose one. The patient, David Miller, construction worker, father of 3, almost died. I performed an emergency needle decompression without authorization, got fired for it. The class was riveted, silent, leaning forward. That doctor is in this room right now. She looked at Blake. He made a mistake. An arrogant, dangerous mistake. But he's here because he wants to learn, because he chose to be better. That takes courage. Blake's eyes were wet, but he didn't look away. Remember that. The worst thing you can be in medicine is too proud to learn, too arrogant to listen, too confident to ask for help. Pride doesn't just wound your ego, it kills your patience. She clicked the remote. A new slide appeared. Lieutenant Ryan Brooks, young, smiling, in his dress uniform, 22 years old forever. This is Lieutenant Ryan Brooks. He died in Syria in March of 2023 because I had to make a choice. 2 casualties, 1 bag of plasma. I chose to save the operator who had a better chance of survival. The room was silent, breathing the only sound. Lieutenant Brooks died. Petty Officer Fletcher lived. I think about that choice every single day. I dream about it. I wonder if I made the right call. I probably always will. She clicked again. Garrett Fletcher, now a Chief Petty Officer, healthy, alive, smiling in his dress blues. But Chief Fletcher is alive. He's deployed twice since Syria. He's saved 3 operators' lives in the field using skills I taught him. So maybe those 3 lives justify Brooks's death. Or maybe they don't. Maybe nothing justifies it. She turned to face the class fully. No podium between them. The point is this. You will make choices, impossible choices, life and death choices. Some of your patients will die despite your best efforts. You'll carry them with you, their faces, their names, the moment you couldn't save them. Her voice softened, became almost gentle. But you'll also save people. You'll give them second chances, third chances. You'll send them home to their families. That's why we do this. Not for the ones we lose, for the ones we save. She straightened. Back to business. Class starts tomorrow. 0500. Don't be late. Dismissed. The candidates stood, filed out, buzzing with nervous energy, talking about the course, about Commander Cross, about the weight of what they'd just heard. Blake stayed behind. Approached the podium slowly, like approaching a tiger. Commander, I just wanted to say, don't. Maggie held up a hand. Don't apologize again. You've apologized enough. Now show me you've changed. Do the work. Complete the course. Be the doctor you should have been 6 months ago. Blake nodded. Yes, ma'am. He turned to leave. Blake. He stopped, turned back. I'm glad you're here, truly. The military needs doctors who understand what our operators go through, what combat medicine really means. Learn it, then take it back to the civilian world. Teach others. That's the plan, ma'am. I've been accepted to a trauma fellowship at Walter Reed starting next year. I'll be teaching residents, making sure they don't make my mistakes. Maggie smiled, small but genuine. Good. The world needs more teachers, more people willing to admit what they don't know and learn it. I learned that from you. You learned it from almost killing a patient. I just happened to be there. Blake smiled back, sad but hopeful. Either way, thank you. He left. Maggie stood alone in the lecture hall, looked at the images still on the screen. Brooks, Fletcher, the faces of her past. Her phone buzzed. A text from Stone. Yemenop complete. 0 casualties. Your students performed perfectly. 3 lives saved that would have been lost. You're making a difference, Phoenix. Proud of you. Maggie smiled, set the phone down, walked to the window, looked out over Coronado, the base, the ocean beyond, the sun setting over the Pacific in shades of orange and gold. 50 new candidates, 50 potential lifesavers, 50 chances to get it right. She wouldn't save them all. Training had attrition. The field would take some. That was the nature of war. But she'd give every single one the best chance possible. That was her mission now, not fighting wars, teaching warriors to survive them. She touched the medal at her neck, the tags she wore every day now, not hidden, not ashamed. Commander E. Cross, DEVGRU, call sign Phoenix. Phoenix had risen from the ashes, not as a warrior, as a teacher, a guardian, a keeper of hard-won knowledge, and that was enough. Behind her, on the wall of her office, hung a plaque, wood, simple, with words she'd chosen carefully. The strongest warriors are not those who always win, but those who teach others to survive. Maggie read it one more time, like a prayer, like a promise. Then she picked up her materials, her lesson plans for tomorrow. The curriculum she'd spent 6 months perfecting, headed for her office down the hall. Tomorrow, 50 students would learn how to save lives under fire. And she would teach them everything she knew, every trick, every technique, every hard lesson bought with blood and loss. Because that's what Phoenix did now. She didn't fight anymore. She didn't choose who lived and who died in the moment of crisis. She prepared others to make those choices, armed them with knowledge, with confidence, with the skills to bring their people home. One student at a time, one life at a time, one generation of guardians at a time. Maggie walked down the hallway, the California sun warm on her face through the windows. The ghosts were still there, Brooks, the others. They'd never leave. But they were quieter now, less accusatory, more like companions on the journey. She'd made her peace with them. Not complete peace, that might never come, but enough peace to keep moving forward, to keep teaching, to keep saving lives in a different way. Phoenix, risen, transformed, reborn, not in fire, in purpose.